My name is Evelyn Blake, I'm 30 years old, and I own a beach house worth $500,000 in Outer Banks, North Carolina. It's the only thing I've ever truly bought for myself after years of 16-hour days, canceled vacations, and doing everything on my own. So when my brother looked me in the eye and said, "You should give me the beach house as a wedding gift. Successful siblings should share," I honestly thought he'd lost it. I laughed, waiting for him to say he was kidding. But he didn't blink. He just kept talking about family equity, and how it was unfair for one sibling to have so much while the other started a new life. That house isn't some spare vacation spot. It's where I learned that independence feels better than approval. But to him, it became proof that I was selfish. Within days, he started calling relatives, saying I was hoarding assets and didn't believe in family. Then I got an email titled, "Family Asset Alignment Proposal." It listed my name, my property address, and his signature at the bottom. There was a single note attached. "We'll finalize the transfer at dinner." That's when I realized this wasn't just my brother asking for a gift. It was my brother trying to take everything I'd worked for. If you've ever had to protect what's yours from someone who shares your blood, stay with me because this story doesn't end with a family argument. It ends in court. A week passed before my brother decided to show up again. He didn't call, didn't text, just appeared at my beach house with a folder under his arm, and the kind of confidence only someone entitled could carry. He said he'd been thinking about family balance. That phrase alone made my stomach tighten. I'd heard it before from managers justifying unfair promotions, from relatives pretending generosity was a debt. But hearing it from my own brother hit differently. He spread his papers across my coffee table like a salesman. At the top of the first page were the words, "Family Asset Alignment Plan." The name sounded professional, almost legitimate, until I realized what it really was: a written argument for why I should give him my property. Logan had always been charming when he wanted something. He explained that his marriage would symbolize unity, and that the family should redistribute resources to reflect emotional equality. Those were his exact words, emotional equality. He talked for nearly half an hour, outlining how my unused space could become a foundation for the next generation. He even mentioned potential tax advantages, as if he were offering me a smart investment instead of demanding my house. I listened, mostly because I couldn't believe the arrogance. I didn't interrupt until he paused, expecting my approval. I told him calmly that I wasn't interested. The air went still for a moment before he smiled in that familiar way, polite on the surface, condescending underneath. He gathered his papers, thanked me for my time, and said he hoped I'd reconsider before the family dinner. When the door closed, I stood there, stunned. It wasn't a conversation, it was a warning dressed as civility. A few days later, my mother called. Diane Blake had a way of softening her tone when she was trying to convince me to do something. She asked if I'd heard about Logan's proposal. She made it sound like he'd offered a new business opportunity, not a blatant grab for ownership. Then came my father, Robert Blake, more practical but still cautious. He said maybe we could find middle ground. I told him there was no middle ground between ownership and theft. The following weekend, I joined them for dinner, something I immediately regretted. Logan acted like a host presenting a grand idea. He spoke to everyone except me, painting his plan as noble, fair, and rooted in love. My mother nodded along, my father stared at his plate, and I sat in silence until he turned the conversation my way. He implied that I'd forgotten what it meant to be part of a family, that I was letting material success cloud my values. I wanted to shout, but instead I placed my fork down and told him one sentence: "You don't get to rewrite the meaning of family just because you want something I own." Dinner ended early. On the way out, my younger sister Tessa Blake slipped me a note. It said only, "He's trying to isolate you. Don't respond to him alone." That night, I saw the next phase of his manipulation unfold. A new group chat appeared on my phone, Blake Family Equity. The name alone made me feel sick. Logan had added everyone. Our parents, Tessa, even his fiancée, Haley Cross. His first message read, "Family wealth should serve everyone, not divide us." The replies came quickly, a few hearts, so true, a polite agreement from my mother. I didn't answer. Tessa sent one short response: "Unity doesn't mean ownership." Logan didn't reply directly, but minutes later another message popped up. "Emotional redistribution is the key to healthy families." That phrase again, emotional redistribution. He was turning guilt into a financial concept. I muted the chat and tried to sleep, but every vibration of my phone felt like another line being crossed. 2 mornings later, I opened my front door to find an envelope taped to the glass. Inside was a single printed document titled Family Equity Agreement, Draft. My name was typed at the top, my property address underneath, and Logan's signature waiting at the bottom. Beneath it, in his handwriting, were 7 words that chilled me more than any argument he'd made before. Pending Evelyn's approval at family dinner. That was the moment I realized Logan wasn't asking anymore. He was planning. By the middle of that month, things took a sharper turn. I was at work when a notification from my neighborhood association appeared on my phone. It said someone had requested management records for my property. The message came from Carla Evans, the HOA manager for my coastal community. She asked if I'd recently authorized a relative to access ownership documents. My pulse spiked. Of course, I hadn't. When I called her back, Carla explained that a man claiming to be my co-trustee had provided a document called the Blake Family Trust Agreement. He'd even signed it on my behalf. She'd stopped the process because the paperwork looked off. I asked for a copy, and when she sent it over, my heart sank. My name was typed cleanly beside his Logan Blake under a section titled Joint Ownership for Familial Wellness. He had forged my signature, added my property, and listed the trust's value at $500,000. It was a perfect illusion of legitimacy. I immediately forwarded the file to Mr. Hale, my attorney from Raleigh who'd helped me close on the house years ago. He called within the hour, voice calm but firm. "Evelyn, this is fraud. Keep everything. Don't respond to him directly." That night, I changed every password and stored the original deed in a safe. The next morning, I found my spare mailbox key missing. I started double-checking my locks each time I left the house. 2 days later, an invitation arrived: Logan's engagement party, hosted at a rented waterfront restaurant. Against my better judgment, I went. My parents wanted everyone to be civil, and I needed to understand just how far my brother intended to push. The moment I walked in, I knew civility had no place there. The room glittered with rented chandeliers, and on a screen near the bar, a slideshow displayed photos of Logan and Haley Cross, smiling against sunsets and champagne glasses. But between those photos was something new, an image of my beach house, cropped and filtered under the caption, "The Blake Family Legacy Property." I froze mid-step. Haley's voice echoed through the room as she thanked everyone for supporting the couple's shared vision for family prosperity. My brother grinned in the front row, soaking up the attention. I didn't say a word. I stood near the exit, listening as they talked about their future family vacations at the coast, their long-term equity plans, their commitment to intergenerational unity. Each phrase was a bullet point pulled from the fake trust document. It wasn't just delusion anymore, it was performance. When the speeches ended, Haley approached me with champagne. Her tone was polite, but her words were loaded. "We're so excited you'll finally be part of this, Evelyn. Logan said you've come around." I set the glass down untouched. "I haven't come around," I said quietly. "I came to see how far this farce would go." She blinked, smiled too brightly, and walked away before I could finish. I left soon after, keeping my expression neutral until I reached my car. Once inside, I gripped the steering wheel and let the anger tremble out of me. The next morning, I received an email from my attorney. Attached was his preliminary report Logan had filed for the family trust to be recognized at the county clerk's office. The application had been flagged but not yet processed. Mr. Hale assured me he would submit a legal cease and desist immediately. Still, the thought of my brother walking into government offices pretending to own my house made my stomach twist. That night, as I took out the trash, headlights stopped outside the gate. A car idled for a moment, then backed away when I stepped onto the porch. I couldn't see who was inside, but I knew. The next morning, Carla confirmed that someone had tried again to access property files. She told me not to worry. The association had locked the records and added a note that only I could authorize changes. "Thank you," I told her, meaning it. "I just didn't realize family could require this level of security." She sighed. "You'd be surprised, Miss Blake. Money and blood rarely mix well." That night, I sat by the window, staring at the ocean I could barely see in the dark. The waves were calm, steady, unbothered by what I was fighting. But I wasn't calm. My brother had gone from emotional manipulation to actual forgery, and I knew what came next wouldn't be peaceful. 2 weeks later, my name appeared in a local blog post about financial obsession and family rifts. The author wasn't a stranger, it was my brother. Logan had launched his own website titled Blake Family Wellness Network. He posted essays about emotional equity, claiming that when one sibling achieves financial success, they incur a moral debt to the others. Each article carried a polite but pointed message about the dangers of individual ownership. At first, I thought it was just another rant, but when a coworker forwarded me one of the links, asking if I was okay, I realized how public this had become. Logan had included subtle details about my job, my city, even the approximate value of my house. It was humiliation disguised as philosophy. A few days later, I received a thick envelope by certified mail. Inside was a formal letter addressed from Dr. Lyle Cooper, who described himself as a specialist in financial psychology and emotional wealth realignment. The letter claimed that Logan had entered a therapeutic framework and that I, as a key enabler, was required to attend sessions to address imbalanced emotional assets. It read like satire, except it was printed on letterhead and notarized. The final line chilled me. Failure to engage in this process may result in necessary legal realignment of shared familial resources. Mr. Hale nearly laughed when I showed him the document, but the amusement faded quickly. He's laying groundwork, he said. If he can convince anyone that you're mentally unwell about money, he could file a petition for conservatorship. It's rare, but possible. That was when the fear shifted from irritation to genuine alarm. Within days, Logan started emailing my parents educational resources about financial codependency. My mother called, her voice uncertain, asking if I'd considered therapy for stress management. I realized he was softening them up, turning their concern into doubt. I met with Mr. Hale again, and we drafted a cease and desist letter, citing defamation, harassment, and attempted fraud. He suggested we prepare for court immediately, before Logan escalated. I agreed. That night, I sat in my living room surrounded by legal papers, wondering how a man who once borrowed gas money from me had become a public crusader against my sanity. Then came the next wave, letters from strangers. People who claimed to have joined Logan's wellness network. They thanked me for inspiring their own financial awakenings, as if my refusal to give away property was some kind of spiritual blockage that they, too, needed to overcome. He had built a following. A small one, but loud enough. His social media posts talked about liberating loved ones from financial control. He used vague spiritual terms, alignment, balance, flow, but I could read between every line. He was portraying me as the villain. My father, Robert, stopped by one afternoon visibly tired. He's gone too far, he said. Your mother's confused, your sister's furious. He called the church asking for donations to his equity ministry. I wanted to laugh, but it wasn't funny anymore. Later that week, my lawyer filed the lawsuit officially accusing Logan of defamation and fraud. The papers were served on a Thursday morning. By evening, I got a text from an unknown number. You've weaponized wealth. That's on you, not me. I knew it was him. Mr. Hale advised me not to respond, but I couldn't help replaying the words. It wasn't about money anymore, it was about control. He needed to redefine reality so he wouldn't have to admit failure. 2 nights later, I woke up to lights flashing outside my window. Police cars. Someone had reported a domestic disturbance. When the officers arrived, they explained that a man claiming to be my guardian had requested a welfare check. I showed them the restraining letter drafts, my ID, my court papers. One of the officers sighed. This happens more than you'd think, ma'am. Family disputes gone sideways. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the glow of my phone. There was another message, an email from Logan's legal liaison, asserting that he would seek emotional compensation for psychological damage caused by my refusal to engage. Every phrase felt designed to provoke me into reacting. I didn't. The next morning, Mr. Hale filed for a temporary restraining order, citing escalating harassment. I signed the affidavit with shaking hands. That night, Tessa called. He's telling everyone you're suing him because you're addicted to money, she said quietly. Mom's crying. Dad's furious. He's spinning it like you're punishing the family. I took a deep breath and stared at the framed photo of the 5 of us from years ago. Logan stood beside me in that picture, his arms slung over my shoulder, both of us smiling without a shadow between us. Now, even memory felt like a lie. The first court date came faster than I expected. The courthouse in Wilmington was small, built more for traffic disputes than family implosions, but that morning it felt like a stage built entirely for humiliation. Mr. Hale met me outside the courtroom, crisp as ever, his briefcase balanced under one arm. Stay calm, he said. We're just here for the preliminary hearing. He'll likely grandstand. He wasn't wrong. When I walked in, Logan was already there wearing a navy suit that didn't fit quite right, standing beside a man in a gray jacket who looked more like a motivational speaker than an attorney. The clerk called the case, and my brother rose like he'd been waiting for his cue. He began by thanking the court for allowing a family to heal through dialogue. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, didn't reply. Logan then launched into what sounded like a lecture. He spoke about wealth trauma, about how financial imbalance creates emotional corrosion within sibling dynamics. He quoted philosophers, psychologists, and even something he called quantum generosity. The judge let him talk for several minutes before cutting in. "Mr. Blake, are you making a legal argument?" Logan smiled as if she'd proven his point. "Your Honor, I'm demonstrating that my sister's lawsuit is a manifestation of material addiction, not a legitimate grievance." A hush fell over the room. Even his so-called representative looked uneasy. Mr. Hale rose slowly, adjusted his glasses, and replied in the calmest voice imaginable. "Your Honor, the plaintiff is not addicted to money. She is the legal owner of her property, which the defendant has forged documents to claim. That's not philosophy, that's fraud. It should have been simple. But then my parents arrived. My mother sat behind me, clutching a tissue, while my father hovered near the aisle. They hadn't planned to testify, but seeing them there cracked something in me. For a moment, I wasn't the homeowner or the victim, I was just a daughter watching her family splinter." Logan turned to them mid-speech, voice softening. "Mom, Dad, this isn't about punishment. It's about alignment. Evelyn's holding on to something that's hurting all of us." The judge banged her gavel. "Address the court, Mr. Blake." He nodded, lips trembling. But I could tell it wasn't sadness. It was frustration that no one was applauding his performance. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it brief. I said that I loved my brother once, that I'd helped him out of kindness, and that I never imagined kindness could be weaponized. My hands shook as I read from the affidavit evidence of the forged trust, the defamation, the harassment. By the time I finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Logan had stopped fidgeting. Then came his final stunt. He produced a printed chart labeled, "Emotional Debts Settled Through Familial Acts." It listed absurd line items: parental approval, $1,200. Shared childhood memories, $800. Sisterly validation, priceless but ongoing. The judge stared at it for a full 10 seconds, then sighed. "Mr. Blake, remove that from my bench before I hold you in contempt." That was the moment the mask slipped. He muttered something about systemic greed and capitalist courts, his voice rising until the bailiff stepped forward. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. She granted a temporary restraining order, ordered him to pay damages, and referred the forgery claim to the district attorney's office for review. I thought I would feel relief, but watching Logan being escorted out of the courtroom felt like mourning. Outside, reporters lingered, small-town journalists hungry for scandal. Mr. Hale shielded me as we walked past them, but one question broke through. "Miss Blake, do you think your brother needs help?" I didn't answer. That evening, my phone filled with messages. Some from colleagues offering support, others from family friends who'd read the online coverage. Then came one from my mother. "He's devastated, Evelyn. He says you humiliated him in front of the world." I stared at the text until the words blurred. Humiliated him? He'd spent months dismantling my reputation, forging my name, threatening my safety, and I was the one to blame? Later that night, Tessa called. "You did what you had to," she said. "He needs consequences, not sympathy." Her voice steadied me. Still, when I looked out toward the ocean, the weight of what had happened pressed down like the tide. I knew the court order wouldn't stop him completely. People like Logan don't accept defeat, they reinvent it. But for the first time in months, I had something he couldn't rewrite. A record, a judgment, a truth backed by law. And maybe that was enough not for closure, but for peace. For weeks after the court ruling, my phone stayed silent. No calls from my parents, no messages from Tessa, and certainly nothing from Logan. The quiet should have felt like peace, but instead it echoed a hollow kind of victory that didn't sound like relief at all. I kept working, kept walking on the beach near my house every morning, pretending normal had returned. But small things reminded me that it hadn't. My mother's absence at Sunday calls, the way neighbors glanced away when I passed, the local newspaper headline that reduced months of torment into 5 bland words: "Siblings settle property dispute." There was no mention of forged documents or manipulation, just a sanitized version of family tension. A week later, my father showed up unannounced. His truck idled in the driveway as he sat there for a long moment before coming to the door. I could see the weight in his posture before he spoke. "Your mother's struggling," he said quietly. "She can't reconcile what's happened. She still thinks you two can fix it." I told him that what broke us couldn't be fixed, not by apologies, not by denial. He didn't argue. He just looked older than I remembered and said, "He's my son, Evelyn. But what he did, I can't make sense of it." Before he left, he handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from my mother, Evelyn Blake. Her words were soft but heavy. "I wish love could fix what truth has broken. Please don't shut us out, even if we failed to see you clearly." I didn't respond right away. There was nothing to say that didn't sound cruel or hollow. That same evening, Tessa called for the first time since the verdict. Her voice was tired but steady. "He's gone, Evelyn. He quit his job and left the city. No one knows where he went. Mom keeps saying he just needs space." Space. That was what he'd wanted all along mine. I asked if she thought he'd try to contact me again. Tessa hesitated. "He won't, not now. He's embarrassed, but he's still blaming you. Says you turned the family against him." The words landed like small stones. Even in exile, he was rewriting the story. Over the next few days, I began the process of reclaiming normal life, updating property records, securing online accounts, changing passwords again. My lawyer, Mr. Hale, sent confirmation that the restraining order had been extended another 6 months. "Just precautionary," he said. But the truth was, it wasn't Logan I feared anymore, it was the lingering chaos he'd left behind. At work, I caught myself hesitating before speaking in meetings, worried that someone might see me as combative or cold. The paranoia faded slowly, replaced by exhaustion. Therapy helped, not the kind my brother preached, but the kind grounded in reality. My therapist, Dr. Alvarez, listened without judgment. She said something that stayed with me. "You didn't destroy your family, Evelyn. You just refused to live in their illusion." It became my mantra. A month later, I ran into Haley Cross at a grocery store. She was alone, no ring on her hand. Her face was drawn, her voice polite but distant. "He's not well," she said softly. I thought I could help him, but I couldn't. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, only a deep, tired sympathy. That night, I walked along the beach, the air thick with salt and early summer heat. The house lights glowed behind me like a quiet guardian. For so long, this place had been the target of his obsession, a symbol of everything he thought I'd taken from him. But standing there, listening to the tide, I realized it wasn't the house he wanted. It was validation. And no court, no contract, no apology could ever give him that. Weeks turned into months. My parents began to reach out again, tentatively at first. My mother sent small messages, recipes, old photos, questions about my work. My father visited once more, not to talk about Logan, but to fix the loose railing on my porch. That was his way of saying sorry. As for Logan, the last I heard, he'd been spotted in a small town 2 states away, working at a wellness retreat. No lawsuits, no new institutes, just silence. Maybe that was progress. Maybe it was just distance. One evening, I sat on the deck watching the sky darken over the ocean. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched or blamed or guilty. Just tired and free. I thought of the last words my therapist said before our final session. Peace isn't always about forgiveness. Sometimes it's just about distance and truth. I smiled, took a deep breath, and let the sound of the waves swallow the noise of everything that came before. Autumn came quietly, and with it, a sense of distance that finally felt right. The beach house no longer felt like a fortress or a reminder of conflict, it was simply home again. The air grew colder, the tourists disappeared, and for the first time in years, silence didn't mean fear. One evening, as I sat on the deck, a message arrived from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. The text read, "I'm sorry for everything. You don't have to reply." No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. I deleted it without anger or satisfaction, just acceptance. Later that week, Mr. Hale called to inform me of the final update from the district attorney's office. "They've completed the review," he said. "Your brother has agreed to a settlement in exchange for dropping further charges. He'll pay restitution and complete mandatory counseling. No jail time, but his record won't be clean." It wasn't vengeance, but it was accountability. Word spread quickly in our small circle. Some relatives thought I'd gone too far. Others finally admitted they'd seen warning signs long ago. My father visited again, saying little, only nodding when I asked if Mom knew. "She does," he said. "She's grieving the son she thought she had." I didn't have a response for that. Grief was the right word, only mine had ended months before. A few days later, Tessa sent me a photo she'd found online. It showed Logan working at a roadside retreat, leading meditation classes under the name L.J. Rivers. His expression was calm, even peaceful. Maybe he'd found something resembling clarity, or maybe it was another reinvention. Either way, I didn't wish him harm, just distance. By winter, the restraining order expired without incident. My mother called on Christmas Eve, her tone careful, like she was testing thin ice. "I sent you a card," she said. "No family photos this year, just peace." I thanked her. We didn't mention Logan, or the past. It was the kindest conversation we'd had in years. Life rebuilt itself in small, quiet ways. I repainted the porch, learned to surf badly, joined a community art class. People still whispered, sometimes small-town gossip lingers longer than storms, but I learned to tune it out. Every time I looked at the sea, I reminded myself that survival doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it just means waking up and not feeling afraid of the next knock on the door. In the spring, I decided to sell the beach house. Not because I wanted to run, but because I didn't want my life defined by what he'd tried to take. I bought a smaller place inland, still quiet, still mine. When I signed the closing papers, Mr. Hale smiled. "New beginnings are good for the soul," he said. I believed him. Weeks later, as I unpacked boxes in the new house, I found an old family photo tucked inside a book. It was from a summer years ago, the 5 of us on a picnic blanket, Logan mid-laugh, Tessa rolling her eyes, my parents leaning against each other. I stared at it for a long time before slipping it into a drawer. Not out of bitterness, but out of acceptance. That chapter had ended. Sometimes, when I think back, I realize the real battle wasn't about property, or even betrayal. It was about boundaries, learning that love doesn't mean surrender, that family doesn't guarantee respect, and that forgiveness doesn't require reunion. Logan lost more than a lawsuit. He lost trust, credibility, and the home he claimed to deserve. I lost illusions, and maybe that was the fairer trade. The story people tell about us now is fragmented. Some remember the lawsuit, others remember the family drama. Few remember the truth that one person's entitlement can drown an entire household if no one draws a line. But I did. And in doing so, I saved myself. If I've learned anything, it's this: family can be both shelter and storm. The difference lies in who's willing to close the door when the water rises. I'm not angry anymore, just grateful for lessons that came painfully but stayed permanently. So, to anyone who's made it to the end of my story, thank you. Maybe you've faced your own version of this chaos, maybe not. But if you have, I hope you remember that peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from choosing yourself when no one else will. Tell me what you think. Would you have done the same? If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear how you see it. And if you're listening somewhere out there wondering whether standing up for yourself is worth the cost, trust me, it is. Because sometimes losing family isn't the end. It's the beginning of freedom.